52 cars here at Monza is going to make for a fantastic first round of the Blancpain GT Series Endurance Cup. We've been to Misano for the sprint and now the first of the endurance races. 3 hours of action here at Monza will get underway. The race tomorrow, we've got free practice and pre-qualifying today, qualifying tomorrow morning. David Addison and John Watson trackside in the sunshine here at this Cathedral of Speed at Monza. It remains a wonderful circuit, and it is a truly stellar entry, not just in terms of the number of cars and the brands represented as you see the cars making their way down the pit lane, but also, John, the entry list itself in terms of the drivers. It's like a who's who of international GT racing.
Good morning, David. Good morning, everybody. Tuning in to watch this first practice session here this morning at Monza. Beautiful day, perfect track conditions, and David, as you pointed out, the entry list, aside from the product, there we're looking at, it's a Porsche.
It's the Porsche.
It's the Porsche.
The Porsche, yeah.
But it's the drivers that are now here this weekend behind the wheel of these cars. It's just getting better and better every year.
Just the one, 911. It's the 991 shaped GT3R of Jürgen Hering, and then the twins, Alfred Renauer and Robert Renauer, and that is a car that runs in Pro-Am. Jürgen Hering we saw last year, and he's got quicker and he's got better, but with, I suspect, Robert Renauer at the wheel, it's going to be one to watch in his hands. He and his brother were the winners, or part of the winning crew of the Dubai 24 Hours earlier on in the year, and the cars then on this outlap, working their way down towards the Parabolica. The pit lane is still emptying, so 52 cars takes a while to shepherd out of the pit lane. Traffic, I know it's less of an issue in free practice compared to qualifying because time isn't what you're going for necessarily, but traffic is going to be an issue really all weekend.
That's going to be the key in qualifying. Everybody, particularly those cars that are in the pro category, are acutely aware of the importance of being on the front three, maybe front four rows of the grid, because you can make your break, you can get away. If you have a problem in qualifying, or you qualify in midfield or just behind midfield, you will take effectively the first hour to get yourself to anywhere near where you think you ought to have been in the first place. And in the process, you may overuse the car, you may find, weather here is going to be stunning on Sunday. It's going to be gorgeous here as it is right now and later through the day. So we may see drivers having to compensate, alter driving styles, alter car setups, to accommodate a 3-hour race, 3 single-hour stints. Very tough weekend. On paper, looks very straightforward. For the teams, it's going to be quite interesting to see how they all approach it.
Absolutely. You're looking at one of the many Lamborghinis. This is the car run by the Orange One Team Lazarus operation, and it is Fabio Crestani, Niki Pola, and the Colombian driver Gustavo Yackerman. Crestani is the man behind the wheel of it, and onto his first flying lap of the session. The pit lane has still got 1 or 2 cars in it. Some have just done an installation lap and come back in. 52 of them we have, as I say, in total, making it a mighty entry. And in the background there, heading down towards the Variante Ascari, the Rinaldi Racing Ferrari, Alexander Maxwell, Renat Salikov and Daniel Karlovitz's car. Still quite a bit of weaving going on. A new Pirelli tyre for this year, something else that the teams have got to get a handle on, as well as any changes to the balance of performance. So it's not quite as straightforward as just rocking up at Monza and using last year's data, is it?
No, the tyre is a significant change. So that's something for some of the teams that didn't take part in the sprint event at Misano 3 weekends ago will have to get their head around. While they would have had the chance to test, it's different, and especially the nature of Monza, the layout of Monza, effectively 16 corners. Some of them are very high speed, like Curva Grande, or as it's now known as Curva Bassano. Big load, particularly on the left rear tyre, and that's again where teams are going to have to think about their setup. In Misano, different layout, not the same kind of circuit, not the same kind of corners. They could be more aggressive on their car setup. But here at Monza, they may have to factor in the nature. There's the Curva Grande, flat out in 6th gear, or 7th gear in the case of some, to enable your car to work through those 3 1-hour segments of a 3-hour endurance race. It's 3-hour sprint race. Forget endurance, it's all about sprint in reality. But it's a 3-hour sprint rather than the single-hour sprint from the sprint series itself.
55 you're looking at. That's another potential winner, I would venture to suggest. It's entered as Kaspersky Motorsports from Spirit of Race, but it's operated by AF Corsa under a different name. And it's Marco Chiocci, Giancarlo Fisichella and James Collado. That is a very good lineup.
Mega, stellar, however you want to describe it. That's a car. And again, talking in the paddock on Friday afternoon, who do you think is going to be quick? Which car is going to be the car to keep an eye on? And a lot of the consensus was it's going to be a car like that 55 Ferrari we've just seen going out of picture, particularly with Fisichella and James Collado, who are two top drivers, three top drivers in reality, but those are the headline names, if you wish, in that car.
And another one, John, in the background, just going down towards the Parabolica, the yellow Ferrari, which is one that we saw last year, another of the AF Corsa fleet, Passin Laforas, Michele Rugolo and Alessandro Pierguidi, and that will be up near the front as well, surely.
Absolutely, Alessandro Pierguidi, we know we've seen him in pole position in the Spa 24. Mind you, we did have that little plot in the copybook in the top of Eau Rouge, but nevertheless, Alessandro Pierguidi in a Ferrari 488 is pretty quick indeed.
You're on board with 55 and heading down then towards the first chicane. It's Marco Chiocci at the wheel and speed building now, John, on the run up towards the Curva Grande.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and in these cars, they're generating now so much downforce, the development that's taken place over the last 3 or 4 years with GT3 cars, the refinement, but also the 488 is the turbocharged version of the 458, which in itself was a great race car, a car that was very successful here in many of the national and international championships.
Back on board, this is Marco Chiocci then working his way up to the first of the two NISMO corners. Turn right, short straight, turn right again. Big inviting gravel bed on the left-hand side, and then this run down towards the Variante Ascari. And this section always looks and feels a bit narrow, doesn't it?
Yes, it is narrow. And of course it's lined on either side by the trees that comprise the Royal Park of Monza. And those trees are sacrosanct. They cannot be, they might get pruned occasionally, but that's about as far as it gets. As Chiocci goes through the Ascari chicane, the left, the right, and then the left back onto what you might call the back straight that leads down to, for me, maybe my favourite corner on the racetrack, that's Parabolica. Changed over the years, we've now got a load of tarmac on the outside of the corner. The gravel traps have gone, all in the cause of safety and hoping that that will allow a car, should it run wide. There is gravel ultimately, but there's now a lot of tarmac giving drivers more chance to recover from an error or something that might be beyond their control. Concentration on his eyes, very interesting.
23rd fastest was Marco Chiocci. He's just come across the timing line as there the sole Aston in the lineup works its way down towards the first chicane, number 97. It's the Oman Racing Team entry, familiar in Blancpain over the last few years, Ahmad Al-Hathi and Johnny Adam, just the two of them. Johnny Adam, I think I'm right in saying, is at the wheel of it. I'm just looking to see if it's got a lap time, but we only have at the moment times from the top 40. Yes, it is Johnny Adam, and he is 11th fastest. 3 different championships, 3 different co-drivers, 2 different teams, because this car now run by TF Sport, Tom Ferrier's team, and moving away from Motorbase, therefore, that ran the car last year, and Johnny drives for TF in the British GT Championship, and Tom's squad had a brace of podium finishes at Alton Park in British GT on Monday, and they'd already had a winning class in the European Le Mans Series at Silverstone the same weekend, so it's a top team.
Yeah, there's this car currently in 11th place, just to give you an idea. A 1 minute 48.7 fastest lap so far, Clement Schmidt in 75 ISR Audi, 9/10 of a second quicker than the Aston Martin. It's still early doors, so teams are just going through a few of the little exercises, the installation. Some will have new pads, new discs, some are new cars. So the early moments of this first free practice session, very much cycle your driver, cycle the car, and then towards the end, then look a little bit more seriously at where will we be when we want ultimate pace.
The fastest at the moment is 75, which is Clement Schmidt in the ISR Audi. He's done a 147.858 from Christopher Haas's Audi, and then Patrick Cuellar in the Barwell Lamborghini.
That car, the 77 Barwell, spoke to Mark Lemmer yesterday. He's very pleased with the driver lineup in car 77. He thinks he's going to fly under the radar with that particular car, one to keep an eye on in qualifying.
Well, it's Patrick Cuellar, who is a former Lamborghini champion. It's Martin Kodrich, who was a front runner in Lamborghini racing last year. And the AM is, because it's a Pro-Am car, Adrian Amstutz, who is the reigning Pro-Am champion in the European Lamborghini Series and the AM winner in the World Finals last year, so it is a very good lineup. Stephen Kane is at the wheel of number 7 Bentley, and he's got caught in traffic, but Stephen Kane, who I think it's fair to say is the principal driver in number 7 these days, absolute little star, and you know whenever he's in it, he's going to deliver.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Stephen is the go-to guy in the number 7 car, and that's not to be disrespectful to Vincent Avril. So he is somebody, Guy Smith in that car as well this weekend.
And Oliver Jarvis.
It's Oliver Jarvis.
Having been replaced by Oliver Jarvis. Now, of course, he moves away from Audis, from prototypes, different car, different feel. But he's going to be good as well, Oliver Jarvis.
At the end of the day, same owner paying him.
Oh, true enough. Yes.
VW Group owned Bentley. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say it sometimes, but that's the reality of the modern motor industry. But the GT3 Bentley is a mighty good race car, and a car that ought to be very well suited, light on its feet, in other words, light on its tyres, very well balanced aerodynamically, a very good race car, and given a trouble-free run, expect to see the Bentleys certainly in qualifying to the front of the grid.
M Sport, Malcolm Wilson's team, once more, of course, running the factory outfit. It was here going back a few seasons that it's made its debut, and then it won next time out at Silverstone for that famous win. And Bentley, number 7, has always seemed to have the better fortune, but number 8 has a good lineup as well. That's where Vincent Avril slots in with Andy Soucek and Maxime Soulé. So you've got 2 cars that should be up near the front.
Well, Soulé and Soucek are the residents of the number 8 car on a normal basis. And there's been a shuffle within the Bentley team to put Vincent Avril into that number 8 car, where ordinarily he would be the partner of Stephen Kane in the number 7, so it's a little bit of a mix and match between the 2 number 7 and number 8 Bentleys.
Now this session, free practice, doesn't affect the grid, but it gives us an idea of who is quick. It's an opportunity really in the Pro-Am combinations for the Pro to go out and try and get the car set up, and then to let the AM have as much track time as possible. The lap times are of interest, and so too is number 90 Mercedes, because that's got another impressive driver lineup. Eduardo Mortara, stepping from the DTM, double Carrera Cup GB champion Michael Meadows, and Raffaele Marciello, who was a real star at Misano. He was a real star at
Poor Johnny Kane in Misano found himself a victim of that initial shunt on the opening lap of the Saturday night race. So Johnny Kane in particular looking to get a free, clean weekend and avoid any contact.
59 into the pit lane, that is the Jasmine Jafar switching from HTP, Andrew Watson and Dean Stoneman entry. A spin for 89, that's the Perfetti car, I think, isn't it, of Ludovic Badet, Daniel Perfetti and Alex Fontana, switching away from McLaren, Garage 59 to Mercedes for this year.
Slightly unexpected to see a car, particularly one of these AMG GT3 Mercedes spinning, so we don't know quite what the cause of. We just saw the tail end of the spin. We didn't see what caused it, whether he thumped the curb, which is probably the most likely cause for the car to get into a hop and a skip and a jump. So the car rotated, not something you've seen an awful lot of, or will see an awful lot of, in my view, with the Mercedes-Benz very, very well balanced car, chassis looking outstanding in Lozano.
Fontana was the man behind the wheel, and coming over the timing line here, number 2 Audi, which is the WRT entry of Nathaniel Berton, Stéphane Richelmy, and three-time with Benoit Trellier, who is going to be the first star in that car. WRT has had a real shuffle around. Some drivers have moved on to other categories. Some, like Lawrence Vanthoor, has gone to another manufacturer. They haven't got the same engineering staff as last year, so WRT feels all a little bit different, but again, it is a team with massive experience.
It is, but they've ruled the roost for 3 seasons in effect, but they're now finding challenges coming along, other cars coming in, the R8 sort of midway through its competitive life. I'm sure Audi are looking at what can we do to step forward and get back to the level of competitiveness that we enjoyed across all ranges of circuits. And I don't know what's in their thoughts in their production, but certainly sharing common platforms within the VW Audi group seems to be the mantra of the day. And the next platform for the Audi R8 may well be a Porsche-derived platform, which would be something not dissimilar to the Cayman at the minute, or maybe, possibly, even future 911s.
True. So number 2 Audi bouncing over the curbs, yet to do a representative lap time really in the session. It's still Clement Schmidt who is the fastest, with 1 hour and 13 still to go. Up to third fastest has gone Andrea Bertolini's Ferrari out of Pro-Am. Andrea Bertolini coming back to Blancpain this year, along with Louis Machiels and Nick Homerson, former double Pro-Am champions. And they're currently 43rd in the times, is number 2 Audi though, through the Parabolica. Different livery as well, of course, compared to what you normally see on a WRT car, and this is what it's like on board.
Benoit Trellier, well, a great example of what it's like coming into the pit lane. So we had to get the car slowed down to 50 kilometers per hour. And you're coming off Parabolica, and even though you think you've slowed down, because the exit speed is so high, to get down to 50 kilometers per hour, you think you're walking.
One of the BMW M6s ready to go. That's from the Valkenhorst Motorsport team. Mikkel Jensen,
it's the only
Nico
one there,
Menzel, and Jaap van Laken. Yes, you're right, there were initially meant to be 2, but we're down to 1. You're quite right, Tom, yes. So, flying the flag. The team manager of 961 has to go and see the race director. That's the Alex Demirjian, Abby Eaton, Davide Rizzo Ferrari. And there it is on screen, number 961. Try and piece together who is driving that car in a moment. It's outside the top 40. We only have the top 40 on our timing screen, I'm afraid to say. So with 12 that are a bit anonymous. But 961 there, hustles on. Unusual number as well. I need to get to the bottom of why it's 961. It's another of the AF Corsa fleet. You can work out why it's 911 for Porsche.
Talking about running wide coming up. Was that the Aston in the back run?
I think it was.
Running very wide coming out of the Ascari. I mean, literally, he almost ended up in Monza shopping centres. I mean, there was nothing. Again, the Audi running extremely wide coming out just at the exit of Parabolica, trying to get a good run slipstream off the Ferrari. So this might aid progress, but look, straight line speed of the 2 cars. It's only the little bit of the aerodynamic draft that's just about putting the Audi into position to get alongside, under brakes into the first chicane, and he manages to take the corner away cleanly, as you would like to do.
Lebanon is calling, it says on the side of the Ferrari. That's the backing brought by the industrialist Alex Demirjian, who is Lebanese, and he brings some of the funding for that
I wish he'd bring some of the food. Lebanese food's magnificent.
You're right, actually. Yeah. Say it louder, you'll get the message. There's a whole season to work on it.
Meze.
Oh, he can't hear you. He's behind the wheel of the car. Alex Demirjian comes out of the second chicane.
He's certainly not sparing it, is he?
From a Trofeo Maserati racer through the Lesmos. So we are through the first 20 minutes of the session. It's fascinating, this first free practice period. We had the bronze test yesterday, but it's the first chance we have to see all the cars out, and it's an opportunity to look through the entry list, pick out different cars, different drivers, different liveries, different teams coming into the championship as well, and you start to get a feel now for what the Blancpain Endurance elements of the Blancpain GT series is going to be like this year.
Well, the next round, of course, will be at Silverstone. It'll be a 3-hour event as well. And then we get the first of what will be the two nighttime events, Paul Ricard, in the middle back end of June. Always a popular venue, very atmospheric event. And then the creme de la creme of endurance GT racing, Spa 24.
Last weekend in July, traditional July date for the Spa 24 hours. As Alex de Mergian then heads up towards the timing line and will stay out for another lap. The line just ahead there is where the timing beam is, which he now breaks and therefore gets a lap time on the board. But for the AMs, then this is an important opportunity to get as much track time in as possible. The AM category down to just 4 this year. Pro-AM is strong and Pro very strong, but of course the amateur drivers now have an option, which is the Blancpain GT and Sports Club 1 hour double headers, and some perhaps gravitating towards that, whether away from the pro competition. As you have another look at people leaving the pit lane, being careful not to cut the white line. Now, we've not really focused on HTP yet, but the HTP Motorsports squad has a whole fleet of cars as well, including 86, the American here, Mike Skeen, at the wheel, former NASCAR driver, and somebody that then moved into sports car and GT racing in the States, now coming to Europe for this season. It'll be fascinating to see how he gets on, actually.
Well, it's a bit of a different discipline from racing NASCAR. It depends. There's so many divisions of NASCAR, whether it was actually the full-on NASCAR that we see on television, or the various divisions that even go down to truck racing in NASCAR, but in a very sophisticated contemporary GT car, a car that fundamentally is going to give him a very, very easy introduction to the 2017 Blancpain Endurance and Sprint Car Championship, and on a great racetrack. I mean, I come here every year. There's something about Monza, there's something about driving into the Royal Park, walking down the pit lane, looking at the old garaging that was used in certainly in my childhood memories in the 80s and late 70s, 80s, my childhood memories.
Are you proud? Yeah. It's in colour now, John. It's great. You had a small off here, didn't you, one year?
I did, but it was actually in the exit of NISMO 2,
yeah,
when it was actually a proper corner. But that's another story for a period when you're under a safety car.
Indeed. When I say small off, far from it. But happily John is here to tell the tale when we have a safety car or a full course yellow, which might be thrown in this session by Alain Adon, the race director, just to let the teams have a test of how the full course yellow procedure will work. And over the timing line booms number 31 Mercedes, Mike Skeen, learning about the circuit, learning about the car, learning about European race culture as well, really. So he's got quite a lot to take on board this weekend. Now there is 66 Lamborghini down towards the first chicane. That's the Attempto racing entry of Giovanni Venturini, Marco Mappelli, who is a Lamborghini Junior, and Luca Filippi. So
quick car.
I was going to say 3 quick drivers, and that's going to be one to watch.
Again, referring back to what we saw at Misano, that was the car for the sprint race on the Saturday evening. That was on pole position. It was surrounded by the Mercedes-Benz, but they got the car to work really well at Misano. Sadly, in the opening lap, they had a fuel pump problem. We never got to see its true pace, and then consequently, its starting position in the Sunday event was right at the back of the field, so we never... But again, the 66 Lamborghini, if they want to go with the kind of setup that they ran in Misano, this will be a very quick car. Of course, balance of performance is a movable feast, and there will have been changes from Misano, which was a sprint event, to Monza, which is an endurance event. So whether we actually see that level of performance from this car in qualifying, repeating what it did at Misano, well, we'll just have to wait until Sunday morning before we can get that answer.
Another Lamborghini up the road as well, and behind is the Kaspersky Ferrari number 55 that we were looking at earlier when Marco Ciocci was behind the wheel of that car. So he's working his way through the traffic. Giovanni Venturini now comes through the Parabolica. He was in the 30s last lap through, 37th. So there's time to be found.
So let's see what time the Ferrari, if it records the time or not. Not still in the front page.
That's dropped a long way down, isn't it? And Venturini goes no quicker, 37. So 55 is now on a mission.
Well, it needs to clear these cars as quickly as possible, because it's pointless running behind a car if you can't find a way past. Straight line performance amongst all the brands that are here are pretty much fairly similar. So let's go on board again with the 55 Ferrari, Marco Ciocci, and see if they can do anything a little bit more productive once they get some clear air. But look what's ahead of them. It's just wherever you look, there is the Ferrari coming out of the second chicane. So he's got probably about 4 seconds of a gap. And the wash from those cars ahead of him ought not to have a bang. The car certainly, and a little bit of a bobble in the middle of the first of the two Lesmos. Here we're coming to the second Lesmo. Much slower corner. Still a big penalty if you get it wrong, but there's more runoff on the outside. And principally, the exit curb is a much flatter curb than it was back in 1947 or whenever it was when I went off at the second Lesmo. 1981.
Indeed, yes. This is ingrained on people's minds, I think. Out of the Variante Ascari then comes Marco Ciocci. Whisper it, he's got clear road ahead of him for about 20 seconds, but as John pointed out earlier, there's a lot up the road.
This might be the only clear lap he gets in this entire session, so he's got to get it. We're not seeing any greens, we're not seeing certainly any purples from the 55 Ferrari, so it's an up. And again, the same thing, just he turns in and it just feels unstable in the rear and compromises the commitment to getting on the throttle. In fact, he's coming into the pits, I think. Indeed he is.
Yeah.
So not a satisfactory lap, but an opportunity with a clear road ahead of him to have done something, and maybe didn't take best advantage of it. Interestingly, number 5, Dries van Thor, has gone fastest overall in that second sector, up to third position. So he's on his 11th lap. He's just done that time on his 10th lap. So Dries van Thor and WRT Audi up to third. Really the first time we've seen anybody improving significantly in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah. So one improvement done, and potentially another improvement. As you say, he's got that absolute best in the middle sector. We haven't touched on Nissan yet, but the redoubtable Bob Neville and his merry men are here with 2 of the Nissan GT-R NISMOs, and there is the 23 Pro car, which will be, as normal, Alex Buncombe, joined by Lucas Ordonez and Katsumasa Chiyo. Back, Chiyo-san, who raced a couple of years ago with Alex to win the overall championship. And the Nissan over the timing line.
Talking to the Nissan team yesterday, and Chiyo-san was asked, where is the 2018 car? Ooh, cannot talk. It has run.
Right.
It's run at Fuji, and apparently it is more than significantly different to the car we're just looking at right now. So hopefully that car will be on the racetracks. It'll certainly be for the 2018 season. It might be seen shortly before, but it depends when the actual car is launched as a production car. But the updated whatever GT-R from Nissan is going to be an entirely different beast to the one we're looking at right now.
Because this seems to have been around forever, doesn't it?
It has. I mean, it is in essence the true interpretation of a GT3 car. It doesn't have the engine buried, almost alongside the driver, because it is a front-engine car, and it is very much to the spirit. The engine's high, it's fairly forward. It doesn't have all the interpretation that the Bentley has, the Mercedes has, other front-engine cars. There's not really very many other front-engine cars. So there's Nissan, Bentley, and Mercedes. So they, in a sense, are slightly. There's the Bentley. You can see just coming out of the Ascari. I mean, the way that the Bentley has been engineered by M Sport is just outstanding. The BMW is their 4th one, in fact. And if you look at the M6, I mean, literally, you look in the engine compartment of an M6, you wonder how or where is the engine.
Really?
It is so deep in the chassis. So that's, if you're going down the front engine route with your production car, you've got to have the ability to adapt it in the way that your competitors have done. And Nissan is the last of those manufacturers to have followed that BMW, Mercedes, Bentley route.
One of the orange one Team Lazarus Lamborghinis cycling through a pit stop and then going into the garage. Oops, almost.
Little shunt.
Yeah.
A bit careless.
Yeah.
You don't need to bang the wing end plate. You know, it's just, oops, scusi. You know, well, it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know, it's just unfortunate but unnecessary. Mind you, it's not very wide. You know, the amount of space in the pit lane with 52 cars and garaging. So what's happened is that the garages, which would normally for a Grand Prix have one team per 3 garages, has now got 3 teams almost per 1 garage.
Yeah, it's pretty crowded down there. AF Corsa, with so many Ferraris, it's like a Ferrari dealership, but there's one of the Kettle Racing Ferraris from the AM class. Marco Zanettini, winner here last year, David Perel, the South African, and Jacques Driver, that we've seen in British GT in the past, but also in the Ferrari Challenge. Now coming into Blancpain. And that is a potential winner of the AM category, no question about it, the AM Cup. Opposition in the AM Cup from Rinaldi, Team HB Racing, and AF Corsa with 961 Ferrari that we saw earlier on.
Lots of very strong contrasts in this early spring light. Just difficult sometimes to catch a car coming through the Ascari chicane. Some of the colours just blending into the background of the switch from left to right, then back to left. Oh, and again, just a little bit turning in on the brakes. Maybe a little bit too much front downforce on the car on braking, something that you can tune out relatively easily. But of course, everybody will be going thin and skinny on the rear wing to try and maximise their straight line speed, which is probably the dominant feature of this Monza Grand Prix circuit.
488 is from the Rinaldi Racing fleet. That is one of the few double driver entries. You've got a red flag, and there's the reason. Mercedes stopped coming out of the chicane. Let me just finish the point. Pierre Eret and Rino Mastronardi.
And
that's a big reason for a red flag. That's coming out of the Variante Ascari.
Indeed, that's the reason why.
Yeah.
And is that a Lamborghini?
A Barwell Lamborghini.
It's like a Lamborghini backed into the... Yeah. It's run the curb, I suspect, coming out of the Ascari chicane.
It's gone in forwards, hasn't it? Done front damage and then spun around.
But the problem would have started on the exit. It's probably running that curb and then it's just looped around. You can see bodywork literally all the way across the circuit. Everybody doing their best to avoid the charge. There's the 555 Ferrari, the 55 Ferrari, I think. Again, being very cautious. So... Indeed, a lot of damage. Front end right. Was that I
think it's a Strachan McLaren.
It can be a McLaren.
It's the 42 Nick Leventis, Craig Fleming, Lewis Williamson car that went off yesterday with, I think, Craig Fleming at the wheel very early on in the bronze test. I don't think it even did a lap time. I'll have to check.
Well,
but it went off right at the start of the bronze test. Didn't do a lap time yesterday evening either.
A lot of damage to the right front and to the whole front assembly on the McLaren. Looking at Van Thor, the car that currently is third quickest.
We don't have 42 in our top 40, so I can't tell you who was driving it. So their blushes for the moment are spared.
And working around the front splitter on the number 5 Audi, whether they want to take downforce in, downforce out. But that was a heavy impact at the exit, at the quickest part of the, probably around about 100 miles an hour, maybe a little bit more. So if you catch the curb, and it can flick a car if you run it badly. I know from personal experience what can happen, and that's the outcome. You spin right across the racetrack, and okay, you're scrubbing speed all the time as you're spinning. Nonetheless, there's a barrier not far off the edge of the circuit, and if you make impact, there it is. He's been unfortunate in that he's missed the exit of the tower wall. You can see the tower wall ends. He's just clipped it, just caught the very end of it. So that tower barrier is going to have to be reassembled. So is that a black flag being waved as well?
I think it's just a red flag in the shade.
I'm not sure. I think it's a black flag. But we'll wait and see. Certainly the track is under a red flag. That means everybody's got to come back to the pits at literally a very, very slow pace indeed, especially up around the exit of Ascari. So look how congested the pit lane is. The little dolly jacks being placed under the Bentley to rotate it round to get it, and then there's a Mercedes looking to try and squeeze in between the Bentley and its sister car.
Nick Leventis was at the wheel. Thank you very much to the Blancpain GT Series media team on the other side of the circuit, because they've got more pages than we have, and they confirmed that it was Nick Leventis who is the man behind.
Well, he's the boss, yes,
at the wheel.
So yes, that's Well, at least it's his money. Nevertheless, a lot of damage to a car, and that's putting that car on the back foot. Depends how much damage there is. Hopefully it's fundamentally superficial, but you know, with carbon fiber tubs, as is the case with the monocell, how the McLaren is constructed, one of the few cars that runs a pure carbon fiber. In fact, I think the only car that runs a pure carbon fiber tub. You know, the damage that can, the shock load going through suspension mounting points or any myriad of things can put the car into jeopardy.
Danger now is, second incident that's had in less than 24 hours, can it be repaired for the race? Or can it be repaired for qualifying to get 3 drivers through? Because as yet, there's only Nick Leventis who's done more than 3 laps in the car. This is free practice, so the clock carries on ticking. So this clear-up operation eats into the available time for everybody else. There will be no restart within the next 10 minutes. That's already been confirmed to the teams.
And the rest.
Yeah, but at least 10 minutes. So stand down, teams. And it will be a fair few minutes before the circuit is made good and the tar wall is made good.
Yes.
To go racing.
I mean, it is the barrier and the tar wall that is the critical element in this circuit going green again, so it's a break for everybody. But there you see some of the sister Straka McLarens in their boxes, so that gap is probably where the stricken Straka, hard to say, isn't it, stricken Straka McLaren would normally expect to be residing.
But with 2 incidents then, one in bronze test and now this, it's not looking terribly promising, I wouldn't have thought, for that team.
It depends. I mean, it can be superficial. I don't know the damage that was done to the car on Friday, whether it was the same area, which if it was would be unfortunate, because that then puts pressure on the spares department. How many body panels have they got? And they've got to consider those other cars that maybe at some point later in the weekend requiring replacement panels as well. So it's what's it called, a logistics issue for the team to consider.
Just having a walk down the pit lane here. You're with Rinaldi Racing at the moment. That's the car of Rino Mastronardi, who is behind the wheel. He shares with Pierre Rat, and they are in the AM Cup. And there is the sister car at Rinaldi, which is one of the Pro-Am entries in the background. The drivers getting ready for the resumption of the session, but we're down to 53 minutes. It's an hour and a half in total, but as I say, all this eats into it. Number 11 is another of the quick Pro-Am Ferraris at Kessel, and it is Michael Broniszewski, last year's Pro-Am champion in sprint, endurance and overall, and also multiple race winner in the GT Sports Club. Andrea Rizzoli and Matteo Cressoni, the other drivers. That's a potential Pro-Am winner, no question. Yeah,
Michael Broniszewski has now stepped aside. He's not taking part in the GT Generals category. He's focusing very much on the sprint and the endurance events as a standalone challenge, and he certainly was very impressed for an amateur driver with his performances, certainly over the last year.
I think we said last year, didn't we, that he was an AM+. He was almost too good for the GT Sports Club because he was pretty experienced and certainly very, very competent. And when he was in that, he ran away with it. Looking at the rear camera they got a glimpse of, and somebody's trying to hide themselves against the tyres.
Well, isn't that nice? Richard Attenborough's just about to give us a detailed description of what we are looking at. Is it a skink or David?
Or David Attenborough?
No, not David Attenborough. Now there's the McLaren being hoisted.
What's left of it?
And there's the bodywork, the radiators, the right front, and we can't see at the back of the car whether there's any further damage. Happy days. Hey. It's exactly. Thank you.
All smiles.
Well, that's what motorsport should be all about. Comradeship.
That's down at Kessel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ronnie Kessel's team. And there's the other car that stopped, number 15 Mercedes.
We never really saw. We never saw what happened to it.
No, it was going slowly, and then it kind of expired, didn't it? The Dory Traponic, Scott Hecker, Brett Sandberg car. 3 more Americans coming to race in Europe this year with Sean Paul Breslin's Black Falcon team, the Brit, but his German-based team that specialised for a number of years in VLN. And won the Nürburgring 24 Hours last year, and now has moved, as it has done for a number of seasons, into this very large Blancpain entry in addition. Camera phone at the ready. And there in the pit lane, that's just a snapshot of the entry, and you see how sardines-like it is. Everyone crammed into the pit lane, 52 cars to get into the pits. And don't forget, of course, that you've got refueling to worry about. There will be, for this year, yet again, the Delta time pit stop, that you can't have the pit stop between. It's got to be under or over.
Yeah.
And the pit stop time, based on the information yesterday, 65 to 90 seconds. Some rather concerned faces down at Straka.
Yes, it's a poor start to the weekend for them.
Nick Leventis, who came via historic racing, his father Harry Leventis, with a gorgeous fleet of cars. He did some club racing and then gradually stepped up through British GT into prototypes, but turning his back on WEC and coming with this McLaren effort into GTs this year.
Very much shepherded through those days. Danny Watts was somebody who contributed a great deal to his development as a not just an entrant, but as a competent driver, but getting caught. The McLaren is a great car, but it's edgy.
Yeah.
Even though the refinements, you can see the different. Well, if you compared this car to the original MP412C, which came out 4 years ago, so this is the 650S, and aerodynamically it's totally different, but it's still fundamentally an edgy car. And if you maybe haven't got a lot of front end damage there, hopefully none of that is structural. It's hard to tell, but he's wiped out pretty much the entire front, beyond the front bulkhead. So it's a car that needs a relatively high level of a skill and ability to extract its full potential.
As I can remember you and I standing here talking about the very wet Monza race, where all those MP412Cs in lots of AM hands raced because it was a popular car and everyone thought that's the one to get, and how in those conditions it really was a very nervous car. And I think you said during the race it wasn't for the AMs, it was a pro driver's car. It wasn't one for the AM.
Essentially, it's a car that a pro driver with that little bit more expertise and experience will get the most out of. I mean, you can retune the car, but if you want to maximise the car's potential, you've got to go down that sort of edgy direction. Whereas something like the Bentley we're looking at now, Stephen Kane just standing looking into the cockpit, it's a much more, I would say, gentle car, and I describe it as being very light on its feet for a physically large car. It's got a great chassis. It appears to help the drivers, rather than maybe in the case of the McLaren, the driver's got to be clearly on top of the car to extract its full potential.
Guy Smith in the car at the moment, we understand. The fast lane is open, so the teams can now make their way to the end of the pit lane, ready for the resumption of the session. Car out of the way, and we'll be back in business shortly with still Clement Schmidt for ISR, number 75 Audi, the man to beat. Horrible noise down at Bentley. It sounds like somebody's at the dentist, but shortly we'll get the cars back out on track.
Well, Bentley had, they had to do a lot of work on that suit check number 8 car after the damage was it suffered in the incident on the opening lap of the sprint race on Saturday night. Wonderful shot. Looking down from the tribunes above the garages, the reflected, a little bit of a slightly creative view from one of our cameramen just catching the... Yes, pretty nice. There's the Jaguar. 2 of them here this weekend.
Indeed so. Emil Frey Racing. Christian Kleen driving one of the cars, Stefan Ortelli in the other.
Again, a team that currently running Jaguars has been a Jaguar, the suppliers, I think, in Switzerland, or one of the principal dealers for Jaguar, but also at some point anticipating a change of brand for the Frey team from Jaguar to, we understand, to Lexus, which again is something that could materialise towards the back end of this year, or certainly hopefully for 2018.
It would be interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah. The Emil Frey Group is a huge car dealership, a bit like a sort of Swiss version of JCT 600 as an example, if you're familiar with the British company.
Is that one of your mates?
Well, there's a link, because Sam Tordoff, who's the heir to it, is on the grid. Curious that, hey.
Is that who you're going to buy your Cayman from?
But Lorenz Frey, grandson of Emil, is one of the quick drivers. And yes, they have an awful lot of different brands that they sell. Lexus will be amongst them. But it's a shame, isn't it, in a way, that now they've got two of the cars and more data, and they finally cracked the Jaguar. It's more competitive. They're thinking about moving on to another brand.
Well, I think part of the problem is that the Jaguar is probably coming to the end of its homologation. So there isn't any alternative Jaguar product, and certainly there is no factory program behind whatever the current Jaguar brand or models would be to take that forward. So if you can get a manufacturer to develop the product, as would be the case of Lexus, then you become, oh, look at the damage there. That is...
I'm not encouraged by this.
That is horrible. I think the chassis leg on the left side looks like it's further back than that on the right side, so I think you can see the damage. That was a big hit.
It's gone in hard, hasn't it?
That has gone in very, very hard indeed. I mean, Nick Leventis will feel that on his shoulder. A bit of damage is pointing out in the right rear as well. That might be legacy of what happened yesterday. We can't tell, but certainly that's a big hit to the front of that car, and it'll be interesting to see what the team determine is the solution, whether to try and repair it again or you cut and run with it and say that we're going to withdraw this car.
We'll keep you posted. We'll have a good look at it first. They've got a fair chunk of time before pre-qualifying this evening, but qualifying tomorrow morning perhaps will be the realistic target now. I
mean, just eyeballing it from the commentary booth, that looks to me the best way to solve that car's problem is to put a brand new monocell, the carbon fibre tub, build up a new car around it, but I'm not sure that's something that A, would be permitted, and secondly, I don't know how long it would take to do. It'd probably take a lot longer than the time available.
Yeah, they've got just over 4 hours for qualifying. Before pre-qualifying.
Yeah, you just see those two big aluminium legs which form the front part of the crash structure. Which the question is have they been shunted back? But that is, I mean, that's a mess. That is just a mess.
On a positive note, we saw Nick Leventis out of the car walking away. As you say, he'll be a bit sore, but he's out okay. So, we're back in business then. We've just nudged past the halfway point of this free practice period. And Clement Schmidt's time remains the fastest, 1:47.858 from Christopher Haase. And then third fastest, number 5 Audi, that's had a driver change. And has now got Marcel Fassler into the car. Another Le Mans winner. In the car that he shares with Will Stevens, ex-Grand Prix racer, and Dries Vanthoor, who was doing great things earlier on.
Strange, you know, it's quite awkward, and not awkward, but in Misano, not to have Laurent Vanthoor. Yeah. You just think of WRT Audi, Laurent Vanthoor, the two of them go, it's like fish and chips or strawberries and cream. And now we've only got Vanthoor Jr., who is yet to, you know, scale the heights that his elder brother had done so successfully.
But Dries, in his second year of GT racing, is one to watch. I mean, last year he made people sit up and take notice. He was a bit raw on occasions, but the latent potential was certainly there. This is number 14, the Emile Frey Jaguar. Stefan Ortelli at the wheel of it. And it's great to have Stefan still in the championship. No longer, of course, an Audi factory driver, but perhaps enjoying life just as much here, away from all the pressure. And it's a nice family feel, the Emile Frey Jaguar squad, and Stefan remains a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to him yesterday, and as ebullient as ever.
Yeah.
Happy to be here, and looking forward to getting a competitive run with the Jaguar. You know, the car has been ever improving, and whether the strengths of the Jaguar will pay dividends at Monza, we have to wait and see. We're not seeing too much of the Jaguars at this point, and we've now just 40, roughly, just under 42 minutes of the session remaining.
Well, Ortelli is 12, or that car is 12 and Ortelli is driving.
That's good. Yeah. That's a 1:48.4, just over half a second slower than the 75 Audi of Philippe Salaquada. I mean, that time was set in the first 10 minutes of the session, and is yet to be challenged. The nearest is the 26, which is 0.3 of a second behind. That's 26, the Nissan. Yeah, Christian Kellner's okay. But on board with the Emile Frey Jaguar, trying to position himself, get up the inside past the Am Ferrari, and into the Scari, run the curb, and the inside run the curb again, and then it's here that the McLaren look for the skid marks to see where, yeah, there you can see them just where the car speared off very quickly, no doubt, to the left, and that's why the red flag. But down into Parabolica, big run, second quickest part of the racetrack effectively. It's an early apex, let the car run wide as we run behind the M6 BMW.
Got the chicane, still not at the chicane, now the chicane. Closing right up.
Can you imagine?
Mind-blowing on the view from Pereira, but in Pro-Am, concentrating on his efforts. Now, we've had an improvement, and a big one, up to third fastest, has just gone. Christian Engelhardt in the GRT Grasser Racing Team Lamborghini. 3 personal bests across the sectors. The car's only done about 3 laps all session, but now it is very much in the mix. And there it is. There is 63 coming out of the chicane.
And part of the reason is, having only done 3 laps on his 4th lap, he's got a set of tyres that are probably either brand new or the best of the rest of what they might have had. So that's part of the reason. Nevertheless, it just goes to show you don't need to do a bunch of laps to go quickly. You just got to have a good car and a good set of tyres, a good driver, which they've got, and the time will come. So again, Lamborghini suddenly leaping forward.
Winners here, of course, a few seasons ago, and so we know they've got the potential, and Italian cars always seem to go well at Monza. Funny that. So don't rule out number 63 as being a race winner come Sunday afternoon.
But you always imagine it's going to be the prancing horse rather than the prancing bull. But Lamborghini got that run when the Huracan came in, was it 2 seasons ago, 2015? They got the win, they just destroyed the field, and then there was an appeal or a
they
issue.
were excluded, weren't they, for a
But then they got reinstated.
Back in. Yeah, that's right. So heading down towards the Parabolica. Engelhardt shown as the driver and improving last time through.
Yeah, well, certainly on this lap in his first sector time and a personal best, nothing. Well, it's still a very strong run in the second sector. Wait to see how he will exit coming out of Parabolica. Best time for 1:48.212. So he will hopefully see a small improvement. The problem he will end up facing is that inevitably 150.3. He's maybe had the best of the tire on this run, so a 48.2 as opposed to a 50.3, when he looked to have relatively clear space, indicates, and he runs wide into turn 1, the first chicane, just outbraked himself, and so that lap again is a compromised lap. So unless he wants to go and just get information now for the team on where the base time is going to come from, rather than a peak time that he might have achieved on his 3rd lap, and he did that time of 1:48.2.
There's an incident that's being investigated between 27, which is the Lazarus Lamborghini, the Crestani Polar Yakiman car, and number 19, the other Grasser Racing Team Lambo of Ezequiel Perez Companc, Rafael Giamaria, and Norbert Siedler. We've not seen it, but something's happened, and the stewards are having a look. There's 26, which is the car that's 2nd fastest. Now, Christopher Hasse did the time. He's got the experienced Mark Rosstown at the wheel, who isn't as quick as Christopher Hasse, but he's been racing forever and a day. And there is debris on track at turn 9 on the outside of the racing line.
Okay.
Is that still a legacy of the...
That's the legacy of the Ascari,
yeah. So we've got 33 minutes of the session still to go. And still we work through the entry, and we keep finding other cars that we've not had a look at because there are so many of them. So 26, Mark Rosstown, accelerating his way towards the first of the Lesmos. There he is.
Christopher Hasse, more associated with Enzo Eid when they share in sprint cars. So Enzo Eid is
not here,
not competing in endurance this year, or certainly not here at Monza.
Yeah, but he concentrated more on sprint last year, didn't he? And won that title. But
part of the, we've explained all this I think last year, but the partnership with Christopher Hasse and Enzo Eid, because of there's an average weight across each car. So Christopher Hasse is much lighter than Enzo Eid, and that was seen within the WRT setup anyway, to give Hasse amongst the Audi drivers slight advantage. But it's probably only a 10th or 2 of a second. But nonetheless, it's better to have it on your side than not. 53,
Nick Homerson back in Blancpain, double Pro-Am champion going back to the early days of what was then the Blancpain Endurance Series. He's got Louis Machiels with him again, regular partner, and Andrea Bertolini, who for so many years was part of Michael Bartel's Maserati squad in FIA GT and FIA GT1 World Championship, and then in the AF Corsa Ferraris. Andrea Bertolini, hugely experienced driver,
and a factory employee.
Yeah, indeed so.
The central con. Again, you're seeing the 458s coming into Parabolica. We've seen about 3 of them now, just at the point they're about to commit to that entry into the parabolica, the car just looks unstable and having to turn away. So slightly strange, but it's been consistent over the range of different entrants of the Ferrari so far.
Somebody else that's going to face the stewards is 53. This car, the Homerson Machiels Bertolini entry for a pit speed violation. Now, Nick Homerson is at the wheel. Andrea Bertolini was the last driver. So was it Bertolini on the way in or Nick Homerson on the way out? We don't know.
Not me, Gov.
Not you, Gov.
Not me, Gov.
But one of them has transgressed. 77 from Barwell, it's Adrian Amstutz, Martin Kodrich and Patrick Kujala.
Striking livery, isn't it?
Absolutely. Adrian Amstutz at the wheel at the moment, the Pro-Am champion in the European Series last year, European Lamborghini Series, and the Am winner in the World Finals at Valencia. And Mark Lemmer's Barwell squad thinking they've got a very good driver combination here, and I reckon they are right, because Patrick Kujala, we've seen since he came into Lamborghini racing 2 seasons ago, has been a real star.
Oh, absolutely, and he won race, or has won races after races.
Absolutely.
So this is a car that in the Pro-Am category is one that Mark Lemmer was, I shouldn't say smug about, but he was very happy indeed with the talent he's got behind the wheel. I mean, in many ways, Patrick Kujala, he's got to be close to being a gold.
He's getting there, isn't he? Yeah.
I mean, how long will it be before he gets up to the gold status?
What's holding him back to a degree is that because he spent most of last season in championships as a Pro-Am entrant, the overall results haven't come, not because of him, but because of the co-drivers. And therefore, we know he in isolation is quick, but his CV doesn't say win, 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 win,
no.
win.
And that's the judgment, that's the criteria.
He's a very, very good fit, isn't he? And Adrian Amstutz, in fairness, the Swiss industrialist, I mean, he is not slow either, very experienced Lamborghini racer, but it's a new discipline doing 3 hours, 6 hours, 24 hours compared to 50 minutes of Lamborghini one-make racing.
Well, that Lamborghini Super Trofeo Championship, again, is a mega competitive championship.
Yes.
And again, it's all about pace and qualifying, getting yourself up to the front of the grid and then being able to control the race from there.
488 is the Mastronardi Eret car. Both of them very experienced. Pierre Eret, who has raced going back to the days of FIA GT3. Renaud Mastronardi, who's been racing since the late 90s, had a few years away to build up a business and then came back, but he's racing Europe, racing the States, he's racing touring cars, single-seaters, sports cars, you name it, inveterate enthusiast, and he will be the gun in that car. So, Mastronardi, a bronze driver because of his age, and Pierre Eret, great enthusiast as well. So it's still the 75 Audi now with Philippe Salaquada at the wheel. It's got the top time set by Clemens Schmidt earlier on, but again, how much do you read into the times in a session like this, where you're cycling drivers through, where you're perhaps using old tyres anyway? It's hard to get a real handle on it.
It's more about doing your homework, and then later this afternoon, then you'll see maybe more teams looking at what is possible. But the trouble is, when they run this afternoon, it's the back end of the afternoon, the sun, such as it is, will be beginning to fall away, the temperatures will be beginning to fall away, and then you go into qualifying on Sunday morning, it was at 9 o'clock local time, when it will be decidedly cooler than it is now, and you'll get again different response reaction. The air density might be different as we look at the Aston Martin making its way through the first chicane. Again, a slightly different livery to previous years, and it's amazing just how much the livery can affect how you identify. Yes. I mean, just seeing the Nissan, we had it on screen a little earlier, with now very much the front of the car in red, maybe in response to the Mutel sponsorship on the car. You think, well, is that a Nissan or not, until you get the full side-on view?
Yes, going back a few years, there was the James Ramsey team, wasn't there, with the grey Nissans as well, that Stephen Kane was part of the driving force of, but now it's just down to Bob Neville's team. There's the TF Sport Run Aston Martin. Ahmed Al-Hathi now put into the car. The Omani driver, ex-Formula Renault racer, Carrera Cup GB racer, and now a different team operating the Oman Racing Team entry this year, TF Sport, Tom Ferrier's squad operating it.
up the hill and into the Ascari chicane. Proper chicane. I wish all chicanes followed this example, because it's the exit speed that really makes it so exciting. Reasonably good entry speed, change of direction. It's a long chicane. It's not one of these stop, turn, get on the throttle.
It flows, doesn't it?
It flows. It's a very, very, I think, exciting. You really see a race car because you can get relatively close to the circuit, see it working, and you don't get to see that as much as I'd like to see on many circuits around the world.
So I'm at halfway over the timing line, and I can't expect him necessarily to be as quick as Johnny Adam, who is the Aston Martin factory driver, but he will give a good account of himself, that's for sure. They're in Pro-Am. We've got 25 minutes on the clock. Looking at the yellow Mercedes that was towed back in the red flag, back out and running.
Yep. I dare you suggest it ran out of fuel, but I think it's very unlikely.
Stranger things have happened.
As we look at the Porsche coming down, and the 991 version of the GT3. Jürgen Haring.
Last year it was the Tempto Porsche that he drove. Now it's the Herberth Motorsports squad that's come out of ADAC GT, Carrera Cup Germany, Porsche Super Cup, the 24-hour series, and the Renaults that run it, teaming up with quick businessman Jürgen Haring. So Pro-Am, again, if we want to watch that, but the sole Porsche on the grid seems weird, doesn't it? Porsche won the very first Blancpain Endurance race at Monza, and one of the drivers, Raffaele Giammaria, is in this monster entry.
I mean, I think manufacturers are in different phases of a production run of a model, and this is sort of no longer what the future for Porsche in international GT racing, as opposed to their one-make championships where they have all over the world. So they're focusing on what now is a mid-engined, effectively you might call it, or silhouette 911, which may or may not be the future of the development of that particular model.
Nissan in trouble.
Yep.
Brought out the white flag to say slow-moving car, and is that 22 or 23? I fear it could be 23. That's crawling down to the Parabolica, and he's heading for the pit lane. So the Porsche through, and the Nissan will limp into the Parabolica. But the problem is he's trying to get offline, keep out of people's way. Then he's got to cut across the track to get into the pit lane, which is not very easy to do.
No, it's not. And obviously, if you stay wide at the sort of what I'd call the apex of Parabolica, then when do you make the cut? Well, there we see.
He's done it.
In fact, he's probably just hogged the whole inside line through the corner, which is probably the best option available in reality.
It's 22 Struan Moore, the Jersey-born ex-single-seater racer who was part of Garage 59 at McLaren last year, but he was telling me yesterday he feels very happy with the Nissan, both in terms of the team and the feel of the car, but a problem has brought him down the pit lane. 87 Mercedes presses on, which is the Jean-Luc Bobolic, Nico Bastien and Jules Gounon. Entry Jules Gounon, Jean-Marc Gounon's son, crops up in all sorts of GT cars and all sorts of championships these days, and is quick, so when he's behind the wheel, it's one not to be scared.
Is he a bit of a headbanger like his dad?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
He's not developed that, but I know what you mean about his father. He was fiery.
Was he ever? He was very effective, very quick, but maybe sometimes a little excitable, but you know, he won a lot of races.
Yeah, that's true. He had this magnificently musical French accent, didn't he? It's a real sing-song accent that he had, voice that he had. So that is the Acura ASP Mercedes. What have we got in terms of time? 23 minutes just under, and it remains Audi to top the times from Audi, from Lamborghini, from Audi, Ferrari, Lamborghini, because that Barwell car with Martin Kodrich now at the wheel, we were talking about it earlier on, is sixth fastest. Working through the traffic there, the Jaguar, which is now Lawrence Frey at the wheel. Team has its own camera crew following its exploits for a video diary for the season. Warts and all.
Well, that's typical of what you're going to get at Monza come
Look at it.
Sunday afternoon. You're going to get loads of cars bunching together, and then at some point you'll make your way through them, and then you'll have nothing in sight ahead of you, and then all of a sudden, another 10 minutes down the road, you'll be back into another bunch. So
Is that a slow out?
I'm just going to say whether that's the 75 or not. It is 75. That's the car that still has been quickest. It's been quickest since the session got underway and remains in that position, 147.8. The only car that's actually broken into the 147s so far, with just over 20 minutes of this 90-minute session, with a slight delay for a red flag to return the McLaren to the Straka garage.
So Philip Salaquadra at the wheel. Did he back out to try and let the traffic go? Or has he got a problem? He's carrying on anyway. He looks like he's picked up pace.
He's putting a bit of temperature into the tyres.
So I think he was letting the traffic go, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he's letting the traffic go, but he doesn't want to get too close to the Lamborghini. But no matter how hard you try.
Now, one or two have been getting themselves in strife, including number 31, we understand, which is the Zach Speed Mercedes, heading down to the first chicane.
Well, I mean,
collects another Mercedes.
Well, no, it's just unnecessary. I mean, you've got mirrors, the car's alongside you, it's not going to vanish, and it's there legitimately. There we go, back to Salaquadra.
And that was Kryton Lendoudis, the bronze-graded Greek driver at the wheel.
So that first flying lap by Salaquadra on this run was a 154.5. It's got relatively clear track coming into Curva Grande as we go back to the 85 Mercedes, which is sister car 84 is with Ericsson behind the wheel, is certainly 15th.
85 is the Fabian Schiller,
yes,
Sandstrom, Dominic Baumann car.
24th quickest in a minute, yeah.
Edward Sandstrom being one of the drivers moving from Audi to Mercedes. And that incident you've just seen between the Mercedes, under investigation, 31 Lendoudis we talked about, but the car that he touched was Oliver Morley, Miguel Torriel, Emmanuel Metzger's car.
Hope it wasn't Ollie behind the wheel. You'll never hear the end of that one.
No, it was Miguel Torriel.
So the Mercedes then glimpse of one of the Straka McLarens. Haven't seen very much of the McLarens, other than sadly one of the Straka cars being returned to the pits.
Yeah, McLaren really not looking anywhere near as strong at this stage of the weekend, at least, compared to last year, but let's wait and see what happens in pre-qualifying and then qualifying tomorrow morning. The weather forecast is meant to be as it is today for tomorrow as well, in other words, dry and hot and sunny.
I'm assuming there's something on in America in the Pirelli Challenge or something, because Alvaro Parent normally would be in one of these Straka cars, is not here.
Very impressive the way that Straka is committed so strongly to Blancpain this year, isn't it?
I think it's fantastic.
Not doing it by halves.
Yeah.
Number of cars, star drivers.
Jasmine Jafar, interestingly, he's moved from HTP into the Straka McLaren team. Again, getting his head around driving a mid-engine car as opposed to the HTP Mercedes, which he raced successfully last year. So I suspect Straka just simply cycling all their drivers through to get the requisite number of laps in. The last lap of the 75 car was an improvement, but still, well, 1.5 seconds away from the time it recorded. That was on its 17th lap. May still be on that original set of tyres. Again, seeing cars, just the back end flicking momentarily, then car missing the apex. So we've noticed the Ferrari doing it. There was the Audi doing it in the NISMO 1.
Background is the 50 Ferrari that's not really shone in this session. It's passing Lathoras at the wheel, 23rd fastest. But again, giving new boots for qualifying, expected to be right up there. Passing Lathoras has developed into a fine driver, and he's got two very, very good co-drivers with him as well.
Yeah. I think the bottom line to this session is don't read too much into it.
Yeah, indeed.
I think it's more about get all three drivers, or in some cases all two drivers, comfortable in the car, familiar with the car, familiar with the circuit, and do literally the homework you want to do.
And in theory, keep out of trouble, but that's easier said than done, as we've seen, because we've had a few cars with dramas, whether it's been mechanical or that big damage for Nick Leventis. So, we await news for 42 McLaren. The pre-qualifying session is at just after 10 past 4 local time. So we'll be back with that later on in the day, and we'll have more on that story for you. But for now, the team will be assessing the damage and seeing what can be done.
Nissan coming out of the pits.
Yeah.
As it accelerates. Yeah, so followed by one of those Emil Frey Jaguars. And that's what the BMW doesn't really want. As it comes down into the first chicane, 2 cars exiting the pit lane, thinking, great, I can see down into the first chicane, no traffic, and then suddenly 2 cars pop out. As he
just thinking, you started my memory going about Alvaro Parente, whether he's in America. There is also, whether this is relevant in his case, I'm not sure, but there is this weekend a qualifying race for the Nürburgring 24 hours, and that might take 1 or 2 drivers.
It has taken away drivers and taken away some entrants as well, so that is another possibility indeed.
Jaap van Lagen, massively experienced Dutch driver. He's at the helm of the 35 BMW M6 at the moment, regular in GTs and Carrera Cups.
Again, you're looking again at the BMW, even the back end just sort of momentarily giving up and then regaining traction as it comes through. That's strange. That's 3 cars I've noticed. That's that instability. The BMW was more in the middle to exit of the corner. The Ferrari and Lamborghinis, particularly going into Parabolica, has been at the point just before you get to the apex. Personal bests on this lap for the 35 BMW.
But with all due deference, Mikkel Jensen is new to GT cars. Nico Menzel is not as experienced as Jaap van Lagen anyway, so he would be the gun driver in that car, I would have thought. And makes sense, doesn't it?
Outside of our timing and scoring, we're going to go the top 40, so I don't know where this is going to go.
Fleming's dramas in the now wounded Stracker McLaren. The best bronze time was done by Rino Mastronardi. He did a 48.7, and we're nearly a full second under that this morning, as you might expect with the gold drivers in the cars.
Yeah, I mean, again, going out in the circuit, whether it's just that particular factor or whether there's something that's non-connected to all 4 different manufacturers, right now we're only second guessing, but it's in the Lesmos and it's also to a different degree in this corner we're coming up to now, the Parabolica. So let's see how Ola Jarvis manages. As he soon will be on the brakes there. The dip goes down, gets off the brakes, turns in. Good there, pretty stable. Aiming at one of most of the manufacturers, but for the Ferrari, maybe more so in Parabolica. So Jarvis comes across the line, does a 149.7, which in the context of things is a reasonable time. Similar to the 63 Lamborghini, which is the 49.6. Probably at the minute the 2 quickest cars on track.
We are getting 1 or 2 sector improvements, one of them being done by Davide Rigon in number 72 Ferrari. He's a long way down, trying to bring the car up from the AM driver's earlier efforts in it. As there is James Collado now, who's taken over 55 Ferrari, the quick Brit, ex-single seater gun before he came into Ferraris initially in the World Endurance Championship, but now into Blancpain. And James, another very, very impressive British talent.
Yeah, and another young guy who realised that there's life after single-seater racing and has made the transition in, and now, again, centrally contracted Ferrari driver and enjoying a great career internationally.
78, apart from that pit lane speeding violation, has also had a spin, and there it is rotating.
But he kept it out of the fence, which is the main thing.
And the driver was, we say it was Liam Machitsky last time around. Anyway, it has survived the drama. Yeah,
the tyres will not have survived, but I suspect that's a set of tyres that will be consigned to the back of the garage. It's not going to be used much more, just under 10 minutes now remaining.
And the pit box 66, which was the Attempto Lamborghini that we saw going rapidly earlier on, but has fallen down the order. Just under 9 minutes of the session still to go now.
The teams, if they need to do anything other than basic, well, in fact, even driver changes, it's actually easier to push the car back into the section of these large garages at Monza to carry out the work. There is just not enough room, and it would be, I mean, if nothing else, dangerous. As we look down to the top times, Audi, I have to say, I don't know whether Audi thought they would be top 2 times in this session. Mercedes further down, no doubt following on from Misano, where there have been a readjustment in the balance of performance. And from 9th down to 16th, Jaguar, 114 in 16th position. Then you see that those three Mercedes, 9th, 10th, 11th. So out of the chicane, make the run down into the two Mercedes coming through the Curva Grande, absolutely flat out. And one of those corners that goes on and on and on, but the faster you go, the higher the level of downforce, keeps the car in contact with the tarmac. Then the big break down to this Variante Roggio, one of those nasty lefts and rights, aggressive curbing, easy to get caught out by being too ambitious. Then two of the classic of the two corners that sum up Monza, I suppose, for race fans around the world. Lesmo 1, Lesmo 2, it was reprofiled some 15 or more years ago. Much tighter corner than it used to be. It was a wonderful corner, but very little runoff on the outside, so that was the reason why it was reprofiled, to make it safer for everybody who would be competing. Then the run up into the Variante Ascari, this three-part chicane named after the great Italian world champion Alberto Ascari, sadly who lost his life on the Exodus in a private test, driving, I believe, it was a Ferrari 750 Monza. Car ended up rolling. No one ever to this day can say precisely what was the cause of the accident, but the loss of one of Italy's greatest Grand Prix drivers.
Illustrating the point about the place being so steeped in history. As over the timing line goes Paul Stevens, number 5 Audi. Well, somebody else discovering life after single-seaters. He was busy last year with GT and LMP2 cars, and back for another season of GT racing. He's one of the many drivers on this grid who's also taking part in the new Blancpain GT Asia series. He was at Sepang a couple of weeks ago and got a podium finish. There's 961, which is the Alex Demergian, Abby Eaton, Davide Rizzo Ferrari. Davide Rizzo, winner of the second round of Blancpain GT Asia. Going up now through the Curva Grande, that car, and the clock ticking on down to the last 6 minutes. Davide Rizzo then installed in a car that runs in the AM Cup. But a very experienced driver is Davide. He's perhaps not as rapid as others of the comparable experience, but he has a huge amount of mileage under his belt.
Yeah, he's certainly got a good sense of where to place the car, coming down into the Variante Roggio, using all the racetrack on the entry, and you can see, just watching the body language of this car, that the driver behind the wheel has an idea what he's doing.
Just up the road, the gold Lamborghini number 60, the Raton racing car. Now, Raton, a team that had great success in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo last year. There it is, and that is the car of Stefano Costantini, Andrea Amici and Dennis Lind, who was last year's Lamborghini Super Trofeo champion, the cousin of Kevin Magnussen, nephew of Jan Magnussen, and Dennis Lind now moving up into Blancpain Endurance, and he will be one to watch along with Andrea Amici, who's another former champion in Lamborghini Super Trofeo.
Slightly unusual graphics, the way the car's been, the gold in the head-on shot, it sort of blends in with the colour of tarmac. It's
strange, isn't it?
Quite difficult to see it. When you see it in the paddock, it looks stunning.
And I reckon you'll see quite a lot of it during the course of the race, because it's got good drivers, that. Stefano Costantini is perhaps not as quick as the others, but you're only talking the odd 10th. So as Raton develops into an endurance team rather than sprint racing, we'll want to watch. 4 minutes on the clock. Fascinating morning, looking at the different cars, different teams, different drivers.
Interestingly, car 50 passing the Thoros, spun at turn 7. You didn't see that.
Oh, right, okay.
Saw it on the screen, timing and scoring, but there's one that sort of managed to happen without being spotted.
Sneak through.
And that's one of the cars that we would think, looking at the driver lineup, there's got to be a potential. You've got to put it in your top 10. Assuming that Alessandro Pierguidi would be doing, or David Rigno would be doing the qualifying.
Yeah, passing Lathoris, Alessandro Pierguidi and Michele Rugolo, all decent drivers.
Yeah, Rugolo.
Yeah. But again, we factor in new tyres, and of course when you get to qualifying as well, You leave your best driver in until the final element. When the fuel load is lighter, you don't know what people are doing, not just in terms of tyres, but fuel loads here. There's all of these different things different teams will try.
And the thing I'm going to keep coming back to this weekend is, are you going to throw as many tyres as you've got for qualifying, or are you going to think, well, what's going to serve me better, having a new set of tyres, or possible, for a driver change in the race, or go for a grid position and try and consolidate? I think it's going to be a tough question. I suspect most people will think about getting grid position and consolidating rather than hanging back and then trying to work your way through the field.
In which case, you just put them on for Q3, don't you, where the car is lighter and you've got your faster driver in, and go from there. Number 19 is going to venture back out, Norbert Siedler, but he'll only really get a lap in because we're almost at the flag now. It's one of the GRT Grasser Racing Team cars. Gottfried Grasser's team that's championed Lamborghini, really. It used to be Reiter, didn't it? Hans Reiter's team, but Grasser came along, won that first race for Lamborghini in the championship here at Monza, and has been the go-to team.
Yes, they have. And the Reiter team, actually, they still ran a Gallardo in Misano, and they run Gallardos in the Gentleman's Series as well, so they're still fully involved. But in terms of the Huracan, it's the Grasser team that have really moved on with the development, and of course within Lamborghini themselves, the Lamborghini Trofeo and the versions, the GT3 version of the Trofeo, proving very successful both in terms of Pro-Am and Am teams.
44 is another Stracker car, and Sam Tordoff, Johnny Kane and David Fuminelli are the drivers of this. Sam Tordoff, runner-up in the British Touring Car Championship last year, who had decided during the course of the season, don't want to do touring cars anymore, and was on the verge of retiring from motorsport, believe it or not, and then decided, oh, actually, why don't I try something different, go to some places I've never been to. He's never raced at Monza before, he's never raced at Paul Ricard, never been to Spa, never been to it, never mind raced. So it's a bit of a step into the unknown for Sam, but a very accomplished driver, and one to watch. He was in British GT at Alton Park last week, got second place in the first race, then had an engine problem in the second, but that was in a Barwell Lamborghini. Now he moves to a Stracker McLaren, so he's moving from different teams and different cars, but he was saying to me yesterday the dynamics of a Lamborghini and a McLaren are pretty similar, so it's not as big a culture shock as maybe driving a Lamborghini one week and say a Mercedes the next.
Or a 1 Series BMW, which he was using in his touring car.
That's right, yes.
No, it's interesting that he's saying there's not a big dynamic difference between the McLaren and the Lamborghini. I would have said there would have been, because I would have assumed that we know the McLaren is potentially the quickest car out there. It's the BOP that keeps it in check, whereas the Lamborghini would appear to be slightly more compliant for all sort of ranges of drivers, whether it's Pro or Pro-Am or Am. But the McLaren, I feel, is much more of a Pro car than one that would be certainly an Am car.
Brett Sandberg in the Mercedes that we saw stranded earlier on, but now that's up and running, and the flag is out, so we've got to the end of this free practice period. Highlights, I'm sure, in a bit. We'll have a look at the top times. Still, everyone has to come through and take the flag and then do the in-lap, so just because the checkered flag is out doesn't mean that cars don't continue to circulate for a little while. And at the end of the session, Audi, the ISR car, topping the times, but the serious business of times will begin later today and then tomorrow morning in qualifying.
Just interesting watching the Mercedes, the fundamental stability that the car appears to have. You turn the wheel and the way it's not black. Some competitors.
Laps within that. While that rally during the time that he's 31st, single ADAC champion, but multiple, and then David Fallon. So that is how the time look, how they all the session that was Nick Leventi out of the road was able to do before riding the curb.